Welcome to the NCO Journal podcast. This is a podcast series where we discuss published articles with authors and provide a forum for the open exchange of ideas, information, and solutions. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant Brandon Cox, Senior Editor of the NCO Journal. With us is Sergeant First Class Osvaldo Akite, the NCOIC of the NCO Journal. Today we discuss the article, The Drone Patrol, by retired Gunnery Sergeant and Managing Editor of the NCO Journal, Mr. Chago Zapata. Before we kick things off, could you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, again, I'm Chago Zapata, Managing Editor of the NCO Journal. I've been with the NCO Journal since 2015. I was in the Marine Corps for 20 years as a public affairs NCO, or public affairs Marine. And now I'm here with an amazing team at the NCO Journal. We're doing great things.
Tell us a brief summary about your article and then what inspired you to write it.
Well, the article's just a fictional story that I came up with that I thought was important in a way that would demonstrate some of the challenges that NCOs face and challenges that deal with technology, challenges that deal with dealing with certain things, such as a female NCO suddenly being thrown into the mix as a senior person when she doesn't have that much experience. Whether that's happened to some people or not, I mean, obviously, everybody goes through has different experiences. But I thought it was an interesting way to illustrate those kind of challenges, through a story, through something that, it was fictional, but I think it allowed me to explore technology. And I know there's a lot of stuff out there with drones, drone technology and other stuff, robots and that kind of thing. But I just thought it was an interesting way to approach not necessarily the leadership aspect of it, but not necessarily the technology aspect of it, but the leadership aspect of it and how they kind of combined. And I thought it was a good way to do it by just creating a story that was fictional but based on some facts, because some of the things in there I drew from my own experiences.
Well, that's what's interesting about this article is that it's first of all it's our first creative domain type of article. It's creative domains the new NCO Journal's page where people can kind of submit different types of fictional stories or creative articles, innovative ideas, or anything like that. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but I guess it's as one of the first articles for this creative domain, it really shows us kind of like it gives you an opportunity to kind of talk about what you think war is going to look like in the future, right? And you can paint that picture in a certain kind of way. And I thought it was interesting how you painted that picture as far as how a fob is going to be attacked, how drones are going to play such an important role, how technology can kind of help small teams get bigger picture understanding. So maybe talk a little bit about that, of what that writing this fictional story allowed you to create this kind of world or vision of what you think war is going to look like.
Well, based on my personal experience and being in Iraq, I wanted to I'll start with the first part, the fob. I remember life in the fob, and what would make it. And I pictured this when I was writing the article, or writing my short story, is what would make it challenging, or what would be something that would happen to the fob that would just completely blow us away, that would just kind of leave us just completely stranded and not knowing what to do, and that was an attack on the fob, and I figured what would be the best way to attack a fob, and I thought sending an electromagnetic pulse to knock out like all the electronic equipment, communications, electricity, everything that runs on electric power is gone. So that pulse, that electromagnetic pulse, which I imagine it's something that's technology that's out there right now. I'm sure that it's something that's being worked on by Futures Command or somebody. There's some big brain people out there doing stuff. But I think that when it comes to stories, fictional stories, that it lets us imagine what might happen, and then so that we can think about ways to surpass or overcome some of the challenges that come from these things. Because if any of you've been keeping up with what's going on in Ukraine, they're using drones, and they're using a lot of different stuff. You only see little bits and pieces of it. There's not a big picture thing that allows you to see everything. But if there were certain things that were employed that are employed there, then you know that you can prepare for them. Well, in this fictional domain or creative domain that we've created, it's a place where you can explore things like that. Where if there is an magnetic pulse, cuts communications. Okay, how are NCOs going to be able to function? You have to be able to still get the job done. And that's kind of where that started from. And as far as the rest of the story, I put a platoon out there in the middle of a patrol. They were going to investigate something. They have no idea what they're doing. My main character the protagonist was somebody that I just created out of thin air, but she doesn't know what's going on. And then when leadership gets all blown up, I thought, well, just like it happened with the FOB, now you have the leadership is gone. So they're stranded. They don't know what's going on. And now you have to overcome all the challenges, leadership challenges, technological challenges, challenges of not knowing who the enemy is and things that NCOs face at some point of their career. Maybe not every patrol, maybe not every deployment, but there's going to be times that you have to think outside the box and you have to prepare for the time where you are going to have to take charge and lead. And that's what I was exploring with this.
Yeah, in your story, a young sergeant, she was stranded out in the desert with her squad, and she had to go through some leadership challenges. What do you think are some of those specific things that you put in your article that point directly to NCO professional development?
Being prepared to lead. I don't think that's something that everybody is ready for unless you're kind of tested, So what I mean by that is as an NCO, I think that you should be given, if you're a sergeant and you're back in the rear, you haven't been deployed yet, you're going to different training opportunities, and you're not given a chance to lead, then when the time comes and you are thrown in the fire, you have to either step up or you're burnt. So what I was trying to portray with this story is that yes, you can still function, you can take charge. Although I haven't reached that part of the story, it kind of ended before she was able to take charge and lead these soldiers. But if you're not given the opportunity to know where your limitations are, to train, to take charge. Hey, okay, during this training evolution, Sergeant Johnson is wounded or killed in action. Now you have to take or Corporal Johnson or whoever, you take charge. If you don't go through these kind of things, then you're not going to be prepared. And I think that's illustrated in this story that maybe not to that specific degree, but I think that's kind of where I'm heading when the time comes.
So talking about Sergeant Madden and some of the challenges she faced, kind of her leadership style had to start and then start to evolve rapidly. Do you have a real life example from your experience that you can talk about that attributes to that?
I can't say that I do. It was completely taken from my imagination based on what I think the challenges are that a woman in an infantry platoon would face. I don't think there's too many women, except maybe a few here and there, who are actually have joined an infantry platoon or become a part of an infantry platoon. But I can imagine some of the challenges, and that's why I chose to make it make my protagonist Madden is a woman, Janine Madden, rather than John Madden. I just thought it would make it an interesting dynamic to explore, because a woman thrown in that kind of position as compared to a man, it's going to face completely different kind of challenges. There's going to be, guys who are just like the characters that I wrote. They're going to say, "Hey, man, this chick don't know Jack." They're going to say that just because she's a woman. They're going to assume certain things. They're going to treat her a certain way. And I thought that was important to explore, because maybe we don't hear it, but there's women out there who have to deal with certain things. I have 3 daughters. They're now in their 20s, and I hear things from them, and I know that they're treated a certain way. When I'm with them, they're not treated a certain way. Things don't happen in front of me. But when they're alone and they're with a man, and these men might treat them a certain way that normally that wouldn't happen around others. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I explored that aspect of it, not based on personal experience, other than through because of the fact that I have daughters, but because I thought it was an interesting way to approach it.
You talk about some of these things not coming from personal experience, but there are some aspects in there that come from your experience as well, right? Like, for example, you already mentioned the fob, but maybe talk a little bit about some of the other aspects that are from real life experience.
This might have a bearing with readers or like anybody who wants to submit to the creative domain, is that when you're writing whatever it is, if you're writing a fictional story, it's good to be able to take elements out of your own experiences. Like there was a specific little scenario where I painted a picture with words of a little girl carrying the boy on her hip, right? When I was in Iraq, we were in the middle of An Najaf. We just finished combat operations in the cemetery. The Marines had cleared. Sorry about that. The Marines had cleared the hotels. There were insurgents everywhere at one point, and anyway, the combat ended, and afterwards the colonel was going around giving salacia payments, which is money to the people who were showing bullet holes in their houses and cars blown up, or people who passed away, who died in the middle of operations. And so he's walking around through the city with a Marine with a backpack full of money. And they would, fill out some paperwork, and then they would give the people bill, money. So that attracted a lot of people. And at one point, me and some of the other guys were there was a crowd of people. We were waiting outside a house, and there was a crowd, like a horde of people. And right in front, there was a little girl, with maybe about 10 years old, with a baby about a year and a half on her hip, just like I described. And he had this black stuff on his face, and me and my buddies are looking like, what's on his face, man? What is that? And all of us are just kind of talking and just trying to figure out what it is. And then the kid kind of does a sudden turn, just like I put in my story, and it was just a bunch of flies that were just massed on his face, like like on the snot coming out of his nose. They were laying their eggs in his snot, and the little kid was just kind of just sitting there. The little girl didn't wave the flies away. The kid didn't wave the flies away. And as soon as he settled back down, the flies came right back. And it's a thing that stuck in my mind, and I see it even today as plain as day. I see it as if it was happening right in front of me. But the reason I'm bringing that up, and that's an important question, Sarnekita, is that when you're writing these fantasy or fictional stories, you have to use some basis of reality, I guess, of your own experiences in order to kind of to root them in a place where they seem plausible. Like my story, I thought it seems plausible. It never happened, but it's plausible. It's possible that it could happen, or that such a thing may have happened. So again, and that plausibility makes whatever message you're trying to get across that much more powerful, rather than if you're just kind of basing it on pure fiction that's based on nothing, and it just makes the reader a question mark appear and say, yeah, no, this is all fake. But if it's plausible, it makes it stick, and it makes it realistic. It makes it something that whatever message you're trying to get across is gonna actually carry some strength to it.
Well, that's kind of the beauty about the NCO creative domain. So maybe we can shift into talking about that, and maybe talk a little bit about what it is, and then what can NCOs expect moving forward with that program.
Yeah, the NCO creative domain, that is a new initiative that we started out here, that we actually launched on April 8th, and it is a place where, I guess, a platform where writers, and I'm not going to say just NCOs. I think anybody, officers, junior enlisted, NCOs, anybody who wants to can publish either anything from poems to book reviews to fictional stories. We're open to whatever it is that's creative, that's out of the box, that can be shared with other NCOs. We would prefer that it carries some sort of message. We're a site the NCO Journal is a site where we're dedicated to NCO professional development. And just like I wanted to demonstrate with my story, it's a place where you can talk about some challenges, like challenges that NCOs may face, challenges with technology, like I was talking about drones, challenges with certain societal issues, like women in an infantry platoon. That I consider that a societal issue. So it's a place where we can talk about things that are not in a way that is not structured like what we normally publish in the NCO Journal, which are scholarly types of articles that deal with that have citations, that deal with facts and deal with things that are happening in the Army right now, that kind of thing. So I mean, we still want you to use citations and stuff. If you use doctrine in your story or your article, maybe put a citation in there so that it shows that you have that what you're writing about is based on something that's actually out there, and that we can use it in a way that the Army can use it, soldiers can use it in a way that's based on fact and not necessarily fantasy when it comes to that part of it.
And now, joining us on the podcast to talk a bit about the importance of creative writing, we have our former editor of the NCO Journal, now with the social media and web team with the Army University Press, Mr. Tony Mena. Welcome back, Tony.
Hello. It's so good to be back on a podcast.
Welcome, Tony. Hey, I wanted to bring you in, and I had a kind of question with you. Since you're in all this creative, you've been helping us out with this creative domain thing. Is as you're reading these articles, or what are you expecting to see NCO submit?
Hopefully everything. And we've had stuff like that in the past. I think we've had poetry and we've had reflective writing, and we had this great one on reflective teaching from the SGMA. And so I feel like we've had these creative articles, just didn't have like a direct place where people could access them all at the same time. Because they are two very distinct things. There's the regular articles, which are super important and push doctrine and change the Army for the better. And then there's the creative side, which I think as with its own domain now is going to be very easy to access and people can get inspired. And I just think it's such – and so a little bit about myself. So I was in for a while and did Force Recon. I did all the cool movie stuff, but when I got out, I didn't have a place to like talk about it until I went to college. And then I got really big into the creative side. So I think if I was an NCO and this was happening while I was in, I would just be so happy. And I sort of accidentally stumbled into the creative side later on. But if I knew it was a thing, like what NCOJ is doing now, and for these young NCOs, like it would have pushed me there way sooner and I would be a lot more happy. So yeah, that's what I feel about the NCOJ creative domain. It's necessary and it's so good for young soldiers and old soldiers. Let's
talk about AI, Tony. Now that you introduce yourself, talk about AI. How did you incorporate that? Because I mean, I know that Stasser and Cox. I know you came up with some of the artwork, and another one of our editors came up with some of the artwork as well. But Tony, you kind of made it move, and you added different elements. So tell us about that aspect of the creative side of what we're doing here.
So let's talk about before AI. So before AI, and I'm just talking about really the visual side. AI can be a great tool for writers also. We don't use it as much because we have editors. But you have to think of AI, no matter what you use it for, as like an intern, as like someone that can do the grunt work, but is not super like intelligent all the time because it does make mistakes. It will, I don't want to say it lies, but it will convince you that like you have to fact check everything. So if you view it as an intern capable of good stuff with your vision, then AI is such a great tool. So before AI, if somebody had an idea for a feature photo, because sometimes maybe the feature photo, you get that feeling like of a really good feature photo that someone's going to want to click on it and read it, and It sort of conveys what the story is about. Sometimes those photos don't exist. So before AI, we had to Photoshop everything, and it would take hours and hours and hours and maybe days. And it was not always, the tools and talent wasn't always there to like get your vision perfect. Now with AI, especially like a year into AI, like just constantly rapidly evolving, we can generate several lead photos and then, choose what direction we want to go. And so in like an hour or less, if Chago's not involved, then you can have a lead photo that absolutely complements the story and basically tells the audience like this story or article or whatever is so awesome. So AI has like increased the speed and quality really of what you can do with the story. So a story is now, or a poem or whatever you want, or an article is now like a 360 degree beautiful project instead of before where it was like, here's the text, here's some possible photos, and it was very disjointed. But now it's like, it's all baked together and it is so cool. So yeah, that's my overall view of AI.
I think that's what brought this story together. The short story, when you look at it on online in your phone or even the PDF version or whatever, it just all the graphics, they make it pop. It makes a story, and you can see the images too. So they kind of they're all AI generated, but they give you a picture of what it is that the protagonist is seeing. And that's a thing that the reason we're talking about it and bringing it up, I think, in this podcast when it comes to the creative side is that if any of you decide to take up the challenge and write some creative articles, write something for the creative domain, we can use AI to bring it to life. You can use AI to bring it to life yourself if you want to, take a look at some of the assets that are out there and explore different means. There's so many different AI image generating websites that each of you would have to go and try to find the right one for yourself. But if you send us an article, you write a short story, you write a poem, you do something that you think is interesting, that you want to share with the NCO Corps, that you want to share with the Army, then you can use AI to bring it to life. And if we need help with that, we're always around too. We'll send us your article and we'll create the AI for you and just make it that much better. Which is one of the things that we did with the creative domain website. Is our landing page is that Tony, our resident artist here, turned those pictures that we have on the article, and he made them move. I mean, he gave them 3 dimensions. He made them shift and move, and that's going to be part of our signature when it comes to the creative domain. Is we want to make those pictures move and be more than just a 2-dimensional flat thing on the page or on your screen. It's going to be something that's we want it to be creative. We want it to be impactful, and we want it to be colorful, and something that'll draw people in. So that they'll see the work that's being put in and use that creativity to hopefully expand them in some way or another. Hopefully, professionally develop them in some way. But I don't think that's going to be our be all end all. I think it's our main goal, but it's not going to be everything. We're going to look at every article and on its own merits.
Well, when you talk about professional development, just the fact that we have NCOs reading and writing creatively, like that's improving communication. And I think that's what's important about this too, is that it gives everybody another opportunity or a different avenue to work on their communication skills and to improve those things. Because communication is one of those things that you're always going to need in any profession. And I think the best ways to improve that is to read, write, critically think about some of these things logically, or using different ways of expression or ways to express your thoughts. I think that's what's going to be the professional development. So just the fact of submitting something or reading in the articles in our creative domain is helping people develop professionally.
Yeah, it brings up an interesting point. It made me, I thought of it as while you were talking, and that is the there's a lot of young soldiers out there, NCOs and young soldiers that play video games. This is a platform where you can actually write about stuff that you want to give a video game review, but maybe tie it into the Army somehow, or just explore some aspects of it that help you grow, or whether it's Call of Duty or Baldur's Gate or whatever it is that you play. This is a place where you can actually explore how some of you spend ungodly amount of hours playing video games. Well, why don't you take that and tie it into what you're doing right now as a soldier, and then share it with the rest of the world here to just kind of show your perspective. There's also that also applies to, like, say, TV shows. I mean, I just watched Band of Brothers. Man, that is an amazing show, amazing TV series. I would encourage somebody to go and watch it and then write about it. What are the lessons learned there? What are the important things? There's so many different lessons in that show, and so many things that are important to NCOs, and the NCOs play a big part in that series. Same thing applies to movies, or there's a book that you find interesting. Write about it. Just give your input, give a review, and just share it with the NCO Corps here, and use your imagination and be as creative as you want to explore your and practice your your written communication skills. And this is the place to put it to paper and just send it our way.
Well, seeing as we are fortunate enough to have two very experienced editors on the podcast currently, what would be some of your guys' tips or advice for a new author who has an idea for an article or a creative piece? How do they start?
Yeah. I think the important thing is just to write. And, you put down your whatever it is you want to write about. I mean, it's important to organize it first. If you can, I mean, I know it sounds like work, but you can organize it in your head as almost like an outline. It's got to have a beginning, middle, and an end. First, you introduce what it is you're talking about, and then you talk about it, and then you talk about what we just talked about. If you were doing a more traditional kind of paper, that would be the way to do it. But as far as the creative things of it, just write down your story, but have a beginning and a middle and an end. You can leave the end kind of hanging the way I did with my article, and that brings up a point about the article, why I left it hanging, because first of all, I wanted to see how much interest there was. And another thing, it's like it shows that there's more to the story, that there's more to be learned, that there's, I could have very easily have ended it, but I chose to leave it open-ended. But it's important to just write. And then once you're done, find a friend or somebody you trust and let them read it and ask them for their opinion. I think that's the best advice I could give you. Whether it's your wife or a girlfriend or a good buddy, somebody, one of your battle buddy, they may laugh at you and say, yeah, or they may just take it seriously and just give you some good advice to make it better. But the best way that you can learn to write well is to read. The more well-read you are, the better your writing is going to be, because you see that the way it's done right, and you can kind of almost emulate that and become a good writer yourself. It's important to make sure that you use spell check and you formulate good sentences and make it flow. Have good transitions if you can, but that's about the extent of what I would say that would be my advice to somebody just getting ready to write, or to start really bearing down to write something.
And Tony, given your experience, do you have some advice you'd like to offer?
Yeah. So a lot of people get scared, and maybe I'll talk about my initial writing story in a little bit, but a lot of people get scared about, like, rejection, or maybe it's not good enough. The less you care about that, the more success you're going to have. Like, the worst thing that happens is somebody says, this wasn't a good fit for us. Or, hey, you could maybe tighten this section up. And then it's your choice whether you do or not, because sometimes you get that feeling, and maybe it's perfect the way you wrote it for yourself, and like you're the audience. So you don't have to change anything, just submit somewhere else. So get over the fear of rejection, because they literally just say it's not a good fit. And then you just send it somewhere else. And then, so my own personal story was, so I went to Iraq and I came back and I went to college and I took a poetry class and I started writing poetry and the teacher convinced me to submit it. And so I had this one poem that I just like, you just get a feeling about. You're like, no, this is it. This is exactly how I wanted to tell my story. And so I sent it out and it got rejected like 11 times. And my teacher kept saying, nope, it's good. It's perfect for you. Keep sending it out. So the 12th time is when it got accepted and it won this award or whatever. And then after it won, I was like, well, I want to, just like how I do with AI, like I want to keep learning. I want to keep pushing. So I made this YouTube video for it because I didn't want my poem to just die and never be read again. So I wanted to put it on the internet. So I spent like a month recording music for it and learning how to audio adjust and whatever. And so then I put it on the internet, on YouTube. And this was a long time ago. But then I was like, oh, whatever. And then like 2 years later, I get an email from this person who's like, hey, I run this organization for PTSD research. We want to fly you out to New York City and have you be a featured presenter with Jake Gyllenhaal and these like other A-list actors. And I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, yeah, I remember your poem came out and I saw it on YouTube and whatever. And this was years ago. And so all that happened, and that happened multiple times with different projects, or even that project was like, he brought me out several times. And so I got to hang out and drink beers with people that are way cooler than me. All that happened because I knew I told my story the way I wanted to. I didn't take no, and I just kept sending it out because I believed in it, and my buddy believed in it, and my teacher believed in it. And then I just wanted to keep going. And so I think that's art because I don't create as much anymore because I'm like super busy with other stuff. But like every cool story I have is from believing in something that no one else did and then sending it out over and over and over. And then just cool stuff happens. And we've had writers for the NCOJ be like, oh, so my higher ups saw the story and then, something so good happened because of it. So that's my thing is like, keep putting it out. Believe in yourself.
I think that ties in. You bring up another point too, is that without the support of your teachers, your friends, whatever, you wouldn't have been encouraged enough to send your poem to these other things.
I would have hung it up. I would have been like, nah, this isn't for me. Yeah, exactly. I was very close, even with support. I was very close to being like, this isn't for me. It was like the last letter I sent out is the one that got accepted.
You'll never know, man. But that's the point, is that without friends, people who are willing to support you, to help you, to encourage you, then it would have stalled, and you probably would have just kind of shelved it, and that would have been it, right? So that's a message for you NCOs or you soldiers out there, is that encourage those who come to you with their story, their poem, their idea, their review, or whatever. Give them encouragement, give them positive reinforcement. Be honest, but don't crush them. What we do here at the NCO Journal, when we have articles that are submitted to us that we just outright we reject them. They don't meet certain criteria, and we also have quite a volume, so we can be selective in who we accept and who we don't, because there's so much. There's only so many things we can publish. The point of that is that when we send them the email saying that their article wasn't approved for publication, we don't just put it's not happening. You're rejected. Okay, here it is. Go home. We try to give them input. We give them information that they can use to improve their writing abilities, or we try to give them something that they can get out of it, so that they can continue on and maybe continue writing, or maybe submit something else. The point is here that if you have a friend who approaches you and has a piece of paper in his hand and wants you to read something, don't crush them. Be encouraging, but be honest. That's my take on that. Is that part of the lesson here that Tony had to give to us, is that it's important to have supported people, and that doesn't just apply to other people; it applies to everyone.
Yeah, and if you don't have somebody, send it to us, and we'll be your support channel.
Yeah, we'll be your support channel.
Oh, we've had authors where there's like 6 back and forth rewrites, and as long as you're motivated, we'll get it to a point where we can put it up, and it's going to look great. And then one of my other things is it's not always rejected off of form or grammar or whatever. Like sometimes it's literally like we just published 2 mission command pieces. Like we can't publish a third piece in a row. So don't always get, for the future writers, don't always get wrapped up in the acceptance and rejections. And then the other thing I have is like your next story or your next piece is always going to be better than the one you just wrote. So every time you write, you're going to improve. So don't be afraid to write. And then as you're submitting something, like you're working on your next one, have a goal. I work with athletes too. So it's always like you have to have goals or you're just going to not be swimming anywhere. So maybe your goal is to write 3 stories this year or, write until you're accepted at your favorite place, whatever it is. So that's my thing is like, don't get wrapped up in the rejections and then keep writing no matter what happens because you improve every time.
This illustrates a point too for those of you who have young soldiers who work for you. This is an avenue for you to encourage them to write. You should encourage them to read as well. Obviously, that's something that the more you read, the better writer you become. And it's not a skill that you develop or that you acquire just overnight. It takes practice. It takes some skill, and it takes a willingness to fail, kind of. Because sometimes your stuff that you write it just might not hit the mark. But you have to be willing to try. You have to be willing to go for it. And that is one of the reasons why we have this new creative domain is we want to give an opportunity to those soldiers who maybe don't want to write the more scholarly stuff that we normally publish. They want to try something different. They want to they want to go the fictional route. Whatever the case may be, we're opening the door for them here. And we're hoping that those of you who do listen to our podcast here will reach out to the young soldiers, the ones who are just playing 6 hours of video games after they get back to the barracks after training, and don't do anything else. Maybe this will give them an avenue that where they can be creative and where they can have fun doing something, and where it's not necessarily work like when you're going to school, whatever school NCO. Professional school you might be going to, you have to write a paper there. Well, this isn't something like that. This is something where you can have fun with it. You can be creative. You can write a poem. You can write a story. You can watch a TV show or play a video game and write about it. We're opening the door here, people. Take advantage of it. It was fun to write, to just kind of step away from myself and explore something that I just imagined it. I just made all this stuff up out of thin air, taking from certain things and of my experiences and from things like some of the drone technology I took. It was like from cell phone.
How did it feel seeing that article up there with the photos on a web page, on the Army page, and seeing all that?
Oh yeah, it's so cool. I mean, it's not my first time being published, right, but it's the first creative thing that I've actually published. I'm not like Tony where he did all these poems. He actually has a book. So he's a published author. I'm published too, but my stuff was all on base papers when I was active duty in the Marine Corps. This is totally different with those pictures, and then all the social media. And I'll be honest too, man. I put my fingers in a lot of stuff because I wanted to push it because I thought it was so cool, and I'm hoping that coolness will make other people want to do the same kind of thing. I'd love it if NCOs flooded us with these amazing stories. And then we can use our imagination to create AI art to support them. It feels like a dream come true, man. I actually sent the links.
It does. I feel like that too.
But I sent links to all my family. They went and they read it. No, Chago, I can't believe your story is so awesome. Blah, blah. Why didn't you make the girl Hispanic? That was what my little sister said. Oh, yeah. Why didn't she Hispanic? Well, you gotta add more Hispanic characters to your stories. And I'm like, one step at a time. It's going to be enough challenges with her just being a woman, in an infantry platoon. So let me explore that, and that's kind of why I went in that direction. But I'm just hoping that it'll open the door, that it'll excite people, that it'll get them first of all. if people are, and enough people say that they want to see part 2, then I'll go ahead and write part 2. I already have ideas in my head. But if there's not that much interest, we'll just leave it at that. It's a good kind of hanging point. But I'm hoping maybe somebody else will come in and write part 2 for us. That would be great. That would be amazing. I'd love it.
Thank you for joining us, and a thank you to our audience. Submit articles and get published with the NCO Journal. Don't forget to check out our webpage and follow us on social media. We'll catch you next time on the NCO Journal podcast.